She didn't mean to fall asleep. 1 second she was hiding behind thick velvet curtains, praying no one saw her. The next, the room tilted, warm and heavy, and her body gave in. Just gave out. Her legs folded. Her head leaned back against the stone wall. She told herself it'd be for 1 minute, just to catch her breath, just to stop her shaking. But that music, slow and strange, full of violins and wolf drums, it filled the golden ballroom like honey, sweet and drowning. She was so tired. She hadn't eaten since dawn, hadn't sat down in almost 12 hours, hadn't breathed like a person in years. And the warmth of the ball, that heat of 100 wolves in finery and perfume, pressed in around her like a blanket she'd forgotten how to ask for. So she slept, and everything changed. Earlier that evening, Lyra Vale had scrubbed blood from the feast knives until her hands cracked. Her apron smelled like garlic and fire. The kitchen boys barked orders she couldn't fight, and her boots squished with spilled soup she didn't make. She wasn't even supposed to look at the ballroom, let alone step foot inside it. She was a rejected Omega. No pack, no title, no future. She existed by the kitchen's mercy and the Alpha King's silence. That was all. And still, she let her friend Seer shove her toward the back hallway. "Just go," Seer had whispered, cheeks flushed. "One look, 1 minute, one dream before you go back to scraping grease off the nobles' plates." Lyra didn't have the strength to argue, so she slipped in through the servant corridor, kept her head down, no makeup, no dress. Just her kitchen shift and scraped knuckles and the faintest whisper of soap clinging to her skin. And for a moment, gods, for 1 moment it was magic. The chandeliers were dripping light like melted stars. The air buzzed with ambition, perfume, and pack politics. Wolves in midnight cloaks moved like shadows. Highborn females glittered in silver threads and bone-laced corsets. And above it all, the Alpha King hadn't even arrived yet. Just the threat of him made the room hold its breath. So Lyra stayed hidden, slipped behind a curtain near the far wall, out of sight, out of rank. Just for a minute. Just one. And now her body stirred to a silence that made her skin prickle. She blinked. The music had stopped. The air was different, tighter, as if the room itself was afraid to move. And then she realized the curtain was gone. Or no, she'd pulled it. In her sleep. In her stupid, exhausted haze, she'd shifted, and the fabric had fallen away from her hiding spot. She scrambled upright, too fast, stumbled, and fell straight into something hard. A chest, broad, warm, unforgiving. She froze, hands braced against black velvet, her heartbeat stuttered, and then 2 hands caught her. Not rough, not soft, but certain. The hush that followed was the kind that came before something irreversible. Someone gasped. No, it can't be. She's a servant. Her head lifted slowly. Her gaze crawled upward. And that's when she saw him. The man whose face was carved into legends, Alpha King Kael Draven. His eyes were the color of iron after rain. His jaw tight. His body so still it didn't seem like he was breathing. And for a moment, the entire ballroom vanished. Only the 2 of them remained. Him, holding her, shivering in his arms. The scent hit him like fire in a closed room. Not perfume, not spice, herbs, soap, heat, something clean and real. His wolf surged beneath his skin. And inside him, it whispered one word, low and final. Mine. Lyra's first instinct was to pull back, to run, to explain. But her legs weren't listening. Neither was he. He just stared. 1 heartbeat, 2, 100. Then finally the Alpha King's voice cut through the air, smooth and deep, like thunder trying not to wake the sky. "Take her to the East Wing." Silence. A whole hall full of nobles, generals, and elders, too shocked to breathe. "She stays under my protection," Kale said. And with those 8 words, Lyra's life ended as she knew it. They didn't touch her, the guards. They didn't need to. Her knees barely worked. As she was led away, she could feel the weight of every stare clinging to her back. Judging, burning, whispering, rejected Omega, touching the Alpha King. She hadn't meant to. She hadn't even wanted to be seen. She just needed a moment to breathe. Now, the most powerful wolf in the 5 realms was looking at her like she was fate itself, or a mistake he couldn't stop making. Behind her, the ball picked up again, like a mask being forced onto a broken face. Music, laughter, chatter, fake smiles. But the Alpha King didn't move. He stood exactly where she'd left him, still holding the glass he'd never managed to raise for the toast. And across the room, in that place where instincts speak louder than bloodlines, his wolf paced, restless, wanting, waiting. Make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. This is just the beginning, and things are about to shift. She didn't speak as they led her down the stone halls, didn't cry, didn't ask where they were taking her. She just stared at the floor, silent and small, while the sound of her own heartbeat drowned out everything else. East Wing. She'd never been near it. That was the Alpha's private side of the manor, the space no one spoke about unless they had bloodlines older than ironwood trees. And now she was walking there barefoot, half asleep, with kitchen soot still beneath her nails. The guards didn't touch her, didn't look at her either. But she felt it, the weight of the night pressing in from all directions, velvet, ancient, thick with secrets. She kept thinking, he made a mistake. The Alpha King had dozens of females lined up for alliance. He didn't mean to pick her. Couldn't have. It was the scent, that's all. She must have smelled like someone else. Or maybe his wolf got confused in the crowd. Gods, that had to be it. The room they left her in was warm. Not cozy, too tall, too echoing, but soft with firelight and clean sheets. A bath steamed quietly behind a curtain. A tray of food sat untouched on a small table. Grapes, cheese, warm bread, stew. She didn't move, not until the door clicked shut behind them. Then she exhaled like someone who'd been holding it for years. And for the first time that night, Lyra shook. She hadn't meant to be touched again. Not ever. Not since the day her first mate rejected her, out loud, in front of everyone. He'd stood tall in front of the Alpha Council and said the words like they meant nothing. "She's not mine. She never was." And just like that, everything shattered. She'd been Pac, almost a Luna, a name that meant something. Until she wasn't. Until she was just a kitchen girl with no bond, no title, no worth. She stared at the bath for a long time before she stepped in. The heat burned at first. Her skin stung with it, but she let it wash over her until the trembling faded. And when she stepped out, wrapped in one of the softest robes she'd ever felt, she looked in the mirror like she didn't recognize the girl staring back. He came when the moon reached its peak. No knock, just the heavy door swinging open and Kale Draven stepping inside like the whole manor bowed beneath his boots. He paused when he saw her, not startled, just still. Like something in him was waiting to catch up. Lyra stood near the window, hands clasped, hair still wet. She didn't bow. She wasn't sure she remembered how. He didn't speak, just looked at her, long and hard. Then his voice came low and even, like storm water moving slow. "You smelled like moonroot." Her breath caught. I help grow it in the kitchens. It's for tea, for healing." He nodded, as if that explained everything. But his eyes didn't leave her. They moved over her, not in lust, not in power, but like he was searching for something he'd lost a long time ago. "My wolf doesn't react like this to anyone," he said quietly. "It doesn't make sense." She stared at the floor. "I didn't mean to fall. I didn't even want to be there." "I know." He took a step closer, her spine straightened on instinct. "I smelled something I've only ever dreamed about," he said, "and then you fell into my arms, like a memory I didn't know I still had." She flinched, just a little, but he saw it. "You're scared of me. I'm scared of what this means." Kale exhaled through his nose, pushed a hand through his hair. "My wolf has never been wrong," he muttered. "But this..." He trailed off, and the silence between them stretched like thread between claws. Finally, he said, "The seers will read you at dawn." Her head snapped up. "Why?" "To understand why my instincts want you." A pause. "And why the entire hall smelled wrong once you left." Her voice came smaller than she wanted it to. "What if the reading says I'm nothing?" His eyes snapped to hers. "You're not nothing." "You don't know that." "I know my wolf doesn't wake up for shadows." She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked away. The door shut behind him without another word. Lyra sank to the edge of the bed, her pulse still thudding like warning drums. In the room above, Kyle stood on his balcony. His hands were fists at his sides. He could feel her scent in his chest, his throat, his bones. And inside him, his wolf was pacing. Restless. Hungry. Confused. This didn't feel like desire. It felt like recognition. But he didn't recognize her. And that was the part that frightened him. Because what if this wasn't new? What if this had happened before? What if something, or someone, had brought her back? And if she wasn't the beginning, then what exactly was ending? The seer didn't touch her. She didn't need to. The moment Lyra stepped into the room, something cracked. Not loud, not visible, but the air changed. Like heat shivering across stone before a storm, the seer, draped in bone-white silks, stood perfectly still. Her eyes rolled back for only a second before she whispered, "It's not a blessing, not a curse, something older." Lyra froze. Kale didn't speak, just watched, his arms crossed, his jaw locked. The seer stepped forward slowly. Her fingers hovered near Lyra's chest. No contact. Still. Lyra felt it. A tug. A shimmer beneath her skin. Like someone reaching through the bones of her soul and asking, "Are you still in there?" "It doesn't make sense," the seer murmured. "The blood says Omega. The scent says healer. But beneath that," she tilted her head, "there's something echoing." Lyra's voice cracked before she could control it. "What does that mean?" "You carry memory," the seer said softly. "But not your own." Kale stepped forward. "Is it a bond?" "No," she said. "Not yet, but it wants to be." They left in silence. The walk back to the east wing was heavy. Kale didn't speak. Neither did Lyra. But she kept stealing glances at him, at the tight way his shoulders moved, the way his hand kept flexing like his claws wanted out. He was angry, or confused, maybe both. And his wolf, She could feel it pressing against her thoughts like heat on the back of her neck. She wasn't bonded to him, but she was beginning to feel the pull. Back in her room, the food was gone, the bed remade, a fire lit. Cale stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her. "You didn't lie," he said at last. "Your scent is wrong." "I didn't know it was changing," she said. "It's not changing. It's hiding." She turned to him. "From what?" He didn't answer. That night, she didn't sleep. The fire cracked and whispered across the stone walls. Shadows danced on the floor. Her heartbeat stayed shallow and quick. And when she finally closed her eyes, she saw the garden again. The same dream. Stone archways overgrown with moonflowers. A wolf's paw print in the wet grass. A hand, hers, holding a pendant that glowed like dying starlight. Then a voice, low and broken. "Find me before they do." She gasped, awake. Morning light spilled across the room like spilled gold. She sat up slowly, sweating, heart pounding. Her hand trembled as she reached for the glass of water beside her. And that's when she noticed it, a scar. It hadn't been there yesterday. A small crescent, just beneath her collarbone. Faint, like a memory. She didn't tell Cale. Not at first. She tried to stay quiet, to blend into the corner of the manor like she always had, but servants whispered when she passed. Not out loud, not yet, but with looks. One female bumped into her in the corridor and said, "Smells like someone marked you." Lyra flinched. Later that day, Cale found her in the courtyard. She'd escaped the walls for air, for distance, for the feeling of sun on her skin that didn't taste like questions. He stood behind her and didn't speak. She didn't turn. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you feel it?" "Yes," she exhaled. "What is it?" "I don't know," he said. "But my wolf won't shut up." Then he moved closer, close enough that she could feel his presence pull the shadows tighter. His hand lifted, hesitated, then slowly, deliberately, brushed her hair behind her ear. His fingers didn't linger, but her entire body remembered the touch. And his did too. His breath hitched, just slightly. Then his voice dropped low. "Your heart's racing. So is yours." Neither of them spoke for a long time after that. The breeze stirred petals across the marble path. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, but neither of them moved, because something between them had shifted, not with sound, not with promise, with recognition. That night, Lyra sat on the edge of her bed and turned the scar over in her mind. She didn't know how it got there, didn't know why it throbbed when Cale stood too close, or why her hands kept aching to touch the part of her chest where it lived. She traced it gently, as if it might whisper answers back. And in the mirror across the room, her reflection looked back like it was waiting for her to remember. But what if it wasn't her memory to begin with? She was running, barefoot, wind tearing through her hair, trees blurring into shadow. She didn't know the forest, but her feet did. They knew every root, every bend, every rise of moss-covered stone. The moon was red above her, swollen, low, bleeding light across the branches. And someone was behind her. No, beside her. A presence she couldn't see, but felt. Huge, familiar. A wolf, black as ash, moving just out of sight, and in her hand, a chain. Silver. Heavy. Its pendant burned cold against her skin. She didn't know why she was running. She only knew one thing. If she stopped, she'd forget everything. Lyra jolted upright, gasping. The sheets tangled around her legs. Her skin slick with sweat. Her hand shot to her chest. The scar was still there. Still warm. Still real. The pendant from the dream. Gone. But her palm remembered the shape, like she'd carried it once before. The knock at her door came 5 seconds later, not loud, not uncertain. Alpha knock. She didn't speak, just opened the door. Kale stood there. His eyes went straight to hers. "You dreamed it too," he said. She didn't answer, didn't need to. They both knew now. Whatever this was, it wasn't just instinct. Something was connecting them, pulling them into a story neither of them remembered starting. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. "Describe it," he said. She hesitated. Then, a forest, red moon, a wolf. "Black?" She nodded. "And a pendant?" Lyra blinked. "How did you know that?" Kale moved to the window. His hands curled around the edge of the stone frame. "I've seen it," he said quietly. "Before." She waited. He didn't continue. The silence sat thick between them. Then he turned back to her, something raw flickering behind his eyes. "I had a mate," he said. "Years ago, before the war." Her heart twisted. "She died protecting me." Lyra's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "She wore a pendant," he said. "Silver chain, obsidian stone, crescent carved into it." Her knees nearly buckled. "That's the one," she whispered. Kale's jaw clenched. "It was buried with her." Lyra sat down slowly, as if gravity had changed. She looked down at her hands, then at the scar. "I think I'm remembering things that didn't happen to me." "No," he said. "You're remembering something that did happen, just not in this lifetime." The room spun gently around her. Not from dizziness, from recognition, like puzzle pieces aligning, fragments falling into place. It didn't make sense, not all of it, not yet, but it felt true, somewhere deeper than memory. There was a soft knock. Kale answered. The oracle entered, veiled in violet and shadow. Her voice cut through the room like smoke. "It's time you knew." She didn't ask permission, just approached Lyra slowly, then placed 2 fingers over the scar. The air rippled, and then pain. Not physical, not sharp. Remembering. A garden at dusk. Laughter. A hand in hers. A name whispered under breath. Then, fire. Wolves screaming. A sword breaking through a chest not her own. She saw herself die. But it wasn't her face. It was someone else's. Same eyes, different life. The oracle pulled her hand away. Lyra was shaking, breathless. Kale was already at her side. His hands gripped her shoulders like the earth was trying to slide out from under them. "She's not reincarnated," the oracle said. "She's not a ghost, not a vessel, not a copy. She's a half-soul." Kale looked up. "Explain." "Your mate died before the bond was complete," the oracle said. The soul had already chosen, but fate was interrupted. "Part of her moved on, and part of her stayed." Lyra's voice came out hoarse. "In me?" "Yes," the oracle said. It latched onto the nearest match, someone empty enough to hold it. Lyra went still. Empty. She'd never thought of herself like that. But it fit. After her rejection, after the silence, after the shame and the slow fading of her name in the pack's memory. She had been hollowed out, and someone, had stepped into the quiet. Kael looked like he'd stopped breathing. "She's not her," the oracle said, "but she carries a part of her that never let go." "Memories," Lyra whispered. "Feelings. Instinct." "Scars," the oracle confirmed. "Wolves don't believe in coincidence, but souls don't ask permission. They just find each other again." Kael's voice came low and tight. "What happens now?" The oracle looked at him, then at Lyra. "Now, you choose." But Lyra didn't feel like she had a choice. Not when her soul ached like it remembered a life it never lived. Not when Kael's eyes held grief and longing and recognition in equal parts. Not when her dreams were no longer just hers. And if this piece inside her belonged to someone else, she had to find out why it hadn't let go. Because if part of her soul stayed behind, what was it waiting to finish? She wasn't supposed to be up here. The northern tower was off limits to everyone but the royal bloodline and Kael's war council. The air was colder, thinner, the walls older than memory. Lyra's breath fogged the stained glass window as she stared at the locked door at the end of the corridor. Her heart was beating faster than it had any right to. She hadn't been summoned, but something inside her, something ancient, urgent, had dragged her feet here before dawn. Like a tether, like instinct, like recognition. The door creaked when she opened it. No guards, no warning, just dust, silence, and something sacred pressing in from every wall. It was a private chamber, the kind built to hold more than secrets. A bed, untouched, a dresser of carved obsidian, and a small oil lamp still burning after gods knew how many years. Then she saw it. The portrait, hanging above the hearth, and the moment her eyes met the painting, her knees nearly gave out. The woman in the portrait wore silver armor over a gown of layered ash-gray silk. Her hair, dark like Lyra's, braided with tiny runes, her expression fierce, sorrowful, regal. But it wasn't the face that made Lyra gasp. It was the eyes. Her eyes. Same shape, same storm gray color, same quiet fury hiding behind the softness. Behind her, a voice cut through the air. "I had it sealed after she died." She spun. Kael stood in the doorway. No guards, no cloak, just the man. Worn, raw, alone. He stepped inside slowly, like crossing a memory. "I haven't been in here since the war ended," Lyra's voice caught. "She looks like me." "She was you," he said, then paused. Almost. The silence between them was heavy, grief-colored, sacred. "She died during the siege of Hollowcliff," Kael said. "Took a blade for me. It wasn't supposed to happen. We weren't even mated yet. But she..." His throat locked. Lyra didn't move, didn't speak. "I never got to mark her," he said finally. "Never finished the bond. Just buried it." His eyes found hers. But it didn't stay buried. Lyra's fingers trembled as she approached the painting. "She was strong," she said. "She was everything. And now you think I'm..." "You're not her," he said, gently. "But she's in me." "Yes." She turned away from the portrait, faced him fully. "Are you in love with her?" "I was." "Are you in love with me?" He hesitated, then crossed the room in 3 slow steps, stopped in front of her, his hand lifted, hesitated, then cupped the side of her face. "Every time I look at you," he whispered, "I feel like I'm remembering something I never want to forget." She didn't lean into him, didn't pull away, just stood there, breathing him in. The scent of cold rain and cedar and something darker beneath it, something feral. A sound echoed in the corridor, soft, A scrape. Too soft for most ears, but they both heard it. Cale turned toward the door, wolf senses sharpened. "You're not safe here," he said. "Not anymore." They made it back to her room in silence. But something followed them. She felt it, in her bones, like eyes under her skin. Cale lingered in the hall after she stepped inside. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. The moment the door closed, she collapsed into the chair beside the fire. The scar on her chest burned hot. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She didn't know what to make of any of it. The portrait, the resemblance, the bond neither of them wanted to admit out loud. But most of all, she didn't understand why being close to him made her feel like she was losing herself. Or maybe becoming something else. She looked at the pendant in her palm. It hadn't been there when she left, and no one had come in. Silver chain, obsidian stone, moon-carved crescent at its center. The same one from the dream, the same one from the portrait, the same one she'd seen burning in her memory. Her hand closed around it slowly. Outside, the wind howled against the tower. She moved to the mirror, and this time, when she looked into her own eyes, she didn't see fear. She didn't see confusion. She saw Maris, and the face in the reflection was smiling. But Lyra wasn't. So if she wasn't the one smiling, who was? She woke to screaming. Not hers, not human. Wolves, dozens of them, howling, snarling, clashing in the distance beyond the walls. Lyra bolted upright in the dark. The room glowed red with firelight from the courtyard. She stumbled to the window. Smoke. Flames licking the edge of the western gates. Figures moving too fast to count. Guards, rogues, shadows leaping from rooftop to rooftop like monsters out of legend. The manor was under attack. The door burst open before she could move. Cale, half shifted. His eyes weren't his. They were his wolf's. Gold, wild, deadly. "Don't move," he growled. Blood coated his jaw. She didn't even flinch. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing her wrist. His hand was hot, burning. "Come with me." "Where?" "No time." She followed. She had no choice. The walls shook. Screams echoed from the lower halls. He pulled her through secret corridors, twisting tunnels she didn't know existed. Her breath came in short gasps. Her legs burned. But he didn't let go. Not once. They emerged in a small chamber near the war room. Reinforced stone. No windows. 1 door. Safe. For now. Cale slammed the bolt across the entrance and turned to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No." He exhaled once. A shudder. His shoulders dropped. Then his eyes met hers again. And something changed. They locked, and everything else fell away. The bond cracked open. She felt it. Raw, unfiltered, ancient. A wave of emotion so fierce it nearly dropped her to her knees. Not just desire. Recognition. Need. Memory. Not all hers, not all his. Something shared. Something primal. Something binding. Cale stepped closer, his wolf pacing beneath his skin. He raised his hand, slowly, letting it hover just above her chest, above the scar. She didn't stop him, didn't speak. When his palm touched her skin, the bond snapped into place. A shockwave. She gasped. He staggered. Then it settled, like chains clinking into perfect alignment. Their eyes met again, both breathless. She could feel his heartbeat like it was inside her body. He could taste her pulse like it was running through his own. "I shouldn't have done that," he said. But he didn't move. She wasn't sure she could. He stepped back, eyes wide now, breathing hard. This bond, it's not complete, he said, but it's waking. And if it fully awakens? She asked. Kale looked at the door, then back at her. I'll never be able to let you go. Footsteps pounded outside. Voices shouted. He turned toward the bolt, claws rising again. And then something in Lyra shifted, a sudden sharp pull in her chest. Her eyes widened. She spun toward the far wall. The West Hall, she whispered. What? They're coming from the West Hall. There's a breach. Kale stared at her. How do you know that? I don't. She closed her eyes, but she could see it. Smoke, broken stone, a guard falling, someone crawling toward... She gasped. Kale was already moving. I don't know how you saw that, he said, but you're right. He yanked the door open, then paused. His voice dropped into something darker. I want to tell you to stay here. Lyra stepped forward. But you know I won't. They ran. The halls were filled with smoke, blood, shouts. A dying rogue slashed at them near the armory. Kale caught it mid-air and slammed it into the wall so hard the stone cracked. Lyra didn't even scream. Her senses were sharper now. She could feel movement before it happened, feel heat through walls, sense fear on skin she hadn't touched. Whatever was inside her, it was waking too. And it wasn't just memory. It was instinct, a predator's instinct. They reached the west wing just as it collapsed. Stone, flame, screaming. Kale pulled a guard from the rubble. Lyra knelt beside a fallen scout, whispering words she didn't remember learning. Ancient ones. And the dying boy's eyes flickered open. Luna, he whispered. Later she wouldn't remember how they got back. Just that Kael's blood was on her hands, and her bond was humming like wildfire in her veins. In the quiet after the chaos, she sat on the edge of the ruined hall, staring at her reflection in a pool of water near the broken fountain. Her eyes were glowing, soft silver. And behind them, something was moving. Something not entirely hers. She didn't know what it wanted, but it was getting stronger, and it had just tasted war. What happens when it remembers what it died fighting for? The oracle didn't knock this time. She walked straight into the war room like the smoke hadn't even cleared, like the floor wasn't still stained with blood from the night before. Lyra sat at the edge of the long table, Kale standing behind her, arms crossed, jaw locked. She hadn't slept. None of them had. But she couldn't sit still. Her hands kept twitching. Her chest burned. The bond was alive inside her now, breathing, pushing, waiting, like it had something to finish. You need to know what you're carrying, the oracle said without ceremony. No greetings, no warmth, just truth. Kale didn't blink. Then tell us. The oracle's veil fell back as she spoke. The soul fragment inside her. It's not a shadow. It's a purpose. Lyra's pulse skipped. What kind of purpose? One that was cut off before it was fulfilled. Kale stepped forward. You said she's a half-soul. I did, the oracle said. But there's more. She circled the table slowly, gaze pinned to Lyra. When your mate died, her spirit didn't release. It fractured. Why? Because she made an oath. The room went still. Lyra's voice came out hoarse. What kind of oath? The oracle turned to her. You made a vow before death. One tied to Kale, one the goddess accepted. I didn't. She did, the oracle said. Not you, but the part that still remembers how. Kale's fists clenched. What does that mean for her? The oracle looked between them. Part of her soul is still bound to the promise. And to you. That's why the bond recognized her. Lyra stood. She couldn't sit anymore. Her skin felt too tight. So, all of this... Her voice cracked. The dreams, the memories, the scent. It's not mine. It's becoming yours, the oracle said. How? Because you didn't reject it, she said softly. You let it stay. The room spun. KL moved toward her, but Lyra took a step back. I didn't choose this, she whispered. No, the oracle said, but you can choose what to do with it. Kale's voice cut low, careful. What if she completes the bond? Then the soul will unify. Her life will become her own, entire, free. And if she doesn't, the oracle's eyes dimmed. Then she will fade, slowly, piece by piece, until she forgets who she is. The weight of that landed hard. Lyra pressed her hand to the scar at her chest. It pulsed beneath her touch. I don't want to fade, she said. You don't have to, Kale said quietly. But she looked at him then, really looked, eyes dark, skin bruised, soul aching. You're not in love with me, she said. You're in love with a ghost wearing my bones. Kale flinched. The truth hit deeper than any blade. I don't know who I am anymore, she said. But I do, Kale said, stepping forward. Don't, she whispered. Don't say it if you're not sure. I'm not sure about anything, he said, except one thing. He closed the space between them. His voice dropped low. I didn't fall for a memory. His hand lifted to her cheek. I fell for the girl who had every reason to run and stood anyway. Tears burned her throat. She hated how much she wanted to believe him. But part of her still belonged to someone she had never been, and part of her was still afraid she wasn't enough to become anything else. I need time, she whispered. Kale nodded. His voice cracked on the edges. Take it. The oracle's voice came softer now. There's one more thing. Lyra turned slowly. What? The one who killed Maris knows she didn't cross over. A chill sank into the room. Kale's eyes narrowed. Who? The oracle's mouth tightened. General Solon, the one who led the betrayal at Hollowcliff. He's dead, Kale growled. No, the oracle said. He survived. He's hidden, watching. She stepped closer. He felt the soul awaken. Lyra's legs nearly gave out. Kale was already beside her, steadying her before she dropped. The oracle met her eyes one last time. Whatever he started back then, he's planning to finish it now. Lyra's pulse thundered in her ears. Because suddenly everything made sense. The whispers, the scar, the pendant, the eyes in the hall that never blinked. Someone wasn't just watching her. They were hunting her. And she had no idea how much time she had left before he reached her. The council chamber was boiling with voices. Every elder spoke over the other, wolves pacing, growling under their breath. Arguments clashed like swords. Old laws were hurled across the marble floor like stones. She's not of royal blood. She carries dangerous energy. She's a half-soul, not a mate. She's a threat. Kale didn't say a word. He stood in the center, arms at his sides, barely breathing. But his wolf was already at the surface, prowling just beneath his skin, ready to rip through every voice that dared speak against her. At his back, Lyra stood still, unmoving, watching every face. They weren't speaking to her, only about her, like she was an artifact, a weapon, something that could be locked away. The head elder stepped forward. You must reject her, he said, publicly, today, before that bond cements. Kale looked up, slow and dangerous. Say that again. If you care about your reign, your bloodline, your future, I don't care about any of that, Kale said coldly. I care about her. Whispers flared like sparks. Lyra's stomach twisted, but she didn't look away. Her heart beat steady, even as fire built behind her ribs. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry, and finally, she knew who that rage belonged to. It wasn't Maris. It was hers. "Enough," Kael said. The room fell silent. He turned to face her, but this time, he didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. "You're not a mistake," he said. "Not a memory. Not a ghost. You're mine." The bond between them surged. Magic rippled through the air. Hot, ancient, undeniable. Several wolves stumbled back. One elder dropped to a knee without realizing it. Kael reached for her hand, and Lyra gave it to him. The moment their fingers touched, the bond locked. Not just instinct, not just soul. Claim. A wolf's truth made flesh, and then the wall exploded, stone shattered inward, smoke, flame, screams, rogues, but not just any. Solin's wolves, twisted by black blood, eyes glowing like open wounds, moving in silence, purposeful, focused, straight for Lyra. Kael shifted midair, claws, fangs, thunder on four legs. The throne room erupted in chaos. Lyra didn't freeze. She moved. Every piece of her training, her instinct, her inherited memory clicked into place. She ducked a rogue, slammed a broken spear upward into its ribs, and spun away before its body hit the floor. Two came at her next. She didn't scream. She remembered. The courtyard was fire and shadow when they broke through the doors. Solin was waiting. A man once thought dead, face scarred with old betrayal, cloak blacker than the smoke behind him. And in his hand, a blade Lyra had seen before, the one that killed Maris. Kael lunged. Solin raised a hand. Magic tore through the air, slamming Kael into the stone wall like he was made of ash. Lyra cried out, sprinting toward him, but Solin blocked her path. "You weren't supposed to survive," he said. She met his eyes. "Neither were you. You don't understand what you are," he hissed. "I don't have to," she said. "I know what I'm not." He sneered. "I'm not yours," she said, and her hands began to glow. The power wasn't hers, but it was. It was memory and magic and pain passed down through blood and bond and loss. Her voice came low, like a command. "You took my death once." Her eyes burned silver. "You won't take it again." Solin struck first. Fast. Brutal. But Lyra was faster. She didn't dodge. She didn't flinch. She moved with purpose that belonged to something older than time. Her palm hit his chest, and the pendant burned against her skin. A blinding pulse exploded outward. Not light, not flame. Truth. Solin screamed, not in pain but in recognition. He saw the woman he killed. He saw the wolf who rose again. He saw himself. And then he vanished in ash. Silence, broken only by wind and flame. Then Kael's voice, rough and hoarse. "You remembered." Lyra turned slowly. Her eyes were still glowing. "I didn't just remember," she said. "I finished what she couldn't." He stepped toward her. Their bond thrummed like thunder beneath the ground. But this time, she didn't wait. She reached for him first, held him like she knew how. Not as an echo, as a mate. But behind her, among the rubble, something moved. A whisper, a flicker of shadow that hadn't burned with Solin, and it was watching her with the kind of hunger that didn't belong to the living. She woke to the sound of breathing, slow, steady, right beneath her ear. His chest rose beneath her cheek, warm and solid. Kael. Her hand rested against his heart, and for the first time in a long, long time, it wasn't racing. The war was over. The bond was whole. And she hadn't faded. Outside the broken windows, the sky was just beginning to blush, pale pink clouds brushing the edge of dawn. The courtyard was ash and silence now. Solon was gone, but not everything had burned with him. There were whispers beneath the stone, magic that hadn't been destroyed, only waiting. She pulled the blanket up around her shoulders. Kael stirred beneath her. His arms tightened gently, protective, even in sleep. His voice rumbled low, still caught in the edge of dreams. "You're here." She nodded against him. "I'm here." He opened his eyes, met hers. Something passed between them then. Not words, not even thought, just knowing, deep and final. For a moment, they said nothing. Then Kael touched her face, eyes searching. "You're not her," he whispered. "No. But you carry her strength." "I carry yours too," she said. He exhaled like something inside him finally settled. "I thought I lost everything that night," he said, "when she died." "I think maybe you didn't lose her," Lyra said. He tilted his head. "No?" She shook hers, gently. "I think you were just meant to find someone new who could carry what you gave her. Someone who could carry you." He kissed her then, not because the bond demanded it, but because he did. And it wasn't fire or fury or desperation. It was peace. It was a promise. It was home. Later, she stood at the edge of the East Wing Tower, wind tugging at her hair. Below, the wolves were rebuilding, clearing debris, replanting the gardens Maris once loved. Lyra held the pendant in her hand. The obsidian was cracked now, its magic spent. She let it fall into the river below. Not out of rejection, but release. Kael joined her quietly. He didn't speak, just took her hand, and together they watched the light return to the valley. "You know," she said softly, "I spent most of my life believing I didn't matter. I know. I thought I was forgettable, that I'd die in the background of someone else's story." Kael looked down at her. "You didn't." "I know," she said. "Now." The wind shifted. A crow landed on the outer wall, its wings dusted in ash, its eyes too intelligent to be just a bird. Lyra met its gaze. It didn't caw, didn't fly, just watched, and she felt it again. That pull, that hum beneath the world. "We're not done, are we?" she whispered. Kael followed her stare. His voice was quiet, grounded. "No, but next time." His hand closed over hers. "We do it together." And somewhere far beyond the river, deep beneath forgotten roots, something opened its eyes. It had waited long enough, and now that the half-soul had claimed her place, it remembered who took it from her. The snow had come early that year. Thin sheets of it dusted the trees like sugar, coating the outer fields in silver before the harvest was done. The wind smelled clean, sharp with winter's promise, and the wolves of the Silver Keep ran silent through the frost, their paws leaving no trace on the land that now finally belonged to them. Lyra stood alone on the northern ridge, wrapped in Kael's cloak, watching the sun vanish behind the hills. It had been 3 weeks since the bond was completed, 3 weeks since Solon turned to ash beneath her hands. 3 weeks since she'd looked in the mirror and seen herself. Not Maris, not a vessel, not an echo of the past. Just Lyra Vale, whole, present, alive. But it still didn't feel real. Not always. Behind her, the manor pulsed with new energy. The servants no longer stared at her with suspicion or pity. They bowed, spoke softly, called her my lady without hesitation. The younger wolves came to her with questions, not about the bond or her title, or even the power still flickering under her skin. They came because she'd survived, because she'd been cast aside, forgotten, and still found her way to the center of something powerful, because she was proof that even a broken wolf could rise. KL had changed too, not softened. He would never be soft, but opened. He no longer walked like a man carrying ghosts. No longer stayed up through the dead hours, staring at the war maps as if they could change what had already been lost. He smiled more, not often, but when he did, it wasn't with his mouth. It was with his entire body. A loosening of his shoulders, a light in his eyes that only she ever seemed to pull from him. Still, some nights, he watched the eastern horizon like he expected something to rise from it, and she understood why. Because ever since that final battle, something had been shifting in the land. The crows lingered longer than they should. The moon's cycle faltered. The trees in the eastern woods grew thicker, too fast, too silent. The oracle called it a ripple. A consequence, she'd said, of unfinished magic, of a soul that woke when the world thought it was buried. Lyra had asked if she meant her. The oracle had only looked at her with eyes too old to lie. No, something else. Something that recognized your awakening and remembered its own. But for now, there was peace. And that peace was a kind of magic all its own. The night of the binding moon came 2 days later. An old tradition, a celebration of unity, power, and pack. It was also the night the Alpha King would claim his Luna publicly, not through ritual, not through law, but through vow. And as the fire circle was lit beneath the stars, Lyra stepped barefoot into the clearing, her dress the color of midnight, her hair unbound, her scar glowing faint beneath the hollow of her throat. Kale stood across from her. His eyes didn't move from her even once. And when he stepped forward, he did not recite vows from parchment. He spoke like a man who had spent lifetimes waiting to say what lived in his chest. "I don't promise you a throne," he said, "or safety, or peace. Not forever. This world was never built for stillness." He reached for her hand. "But I promise you this. No one will ever claim you again but me. Not death, not time, not memory." Lyra's voice came soft, but strong. "I don't ask for peace, or a title, or the past." She laced her fingers with his. "I ask for truth, and every part of you that still believes in the kind of bond that can survive what breaks most of us." The crowd didn't cheer. Not right away. They were too quiet, too moved, too aware they were witnessing something old, something holy. Then the first wolf howled, and another, until the night itself sang for them. Later, Seer, they lay tangled in furs beneath the canopy of trees, the fire low and crackling beside them. Lyra traced lazy circles on KL's chest, her head tucked beneath his chin. "What if it finds us?" she whispered. He didn't ask what she meant. "The thing watching?" She nodded. KL's arm curled tighter around her. "Then it finds us," he said. "And it learns what happens when you come for what's already claimed." Lyra closed her eyes, listened to the wind. It was quiet now, still. But in the hush, she could feel it, a presence, far, patient, waiting. It didn't feel evil, just old. Older than Solon, older than memory, and it was no longer just watching. It was coming. But this time, she wouldn't run, not from her power, not from her past, not from what lived inside her, even if it scared her to death. She was the mate of an Alpha King. She was the soul who had risen twice. She was the girl who was never supposed to be chosen, and still stood at the center of fate. And whatever came next, she'd meet it on her own feet, with her claws bared and her mate at her back, because this wasn't the end. It never had been. It was just the beginning of something the world would never forget again.